We'll start today with the Delian League and the Peloponnesian War. Most of you were able to tell me about the Delian League and its existence as an alliance between Athens and the islands between Greece and Asia Minor. Now, one point that these are the islands of the Aegean Sea, not the Mediterranean. It also included some coastal cities and several of the Greek colonies in Asia Minor, and even up into the Black Sea. So it was the Aegean, not the Mediterranean. And most of you left out the start of the Peloponnesian War. Remember that Athens got pushy and basically did turn the league into an empire. And started abusing the other cities and basically giving them orders because they said, we're supplying all the ships. We're protecting you from the Persians. Of course, we should be in charge. And when the cities resisted and called on Sparta, this began the Peloponnesian War with a conflict between Athens and Corinth. Remember, Corinth controls the isthmus of Corinth. And since Athens already controlled the sea, that was Sparta's only trade route to the rest of the world. So then Sparta joined and helped Corinth. So that's how the war started. The Melian dialogue. You told me mostly about most of you told me about the Melian dialogue and told me that it was a discussion, I suppose we could say an argument, between representatives of Athens and the Senate of Melos. When Athens said, you have to join our league whether you want to or not, because we're not going to let you trade with Sparta. And the Melians said, this is unjust. And the Athenians said, we don't care. Most of you neglected to tell me what we learn about Athens and Sparta from the Melian dialogue. And that was both of them both Athens and Sparta, by the time of the Peloponnesian War, had betrayed their principles. They had betrayed the principles that made them who they were. In Athens, the pursuit of wisdom and above all justice was what made Athenians who they were, what made them different from the other Greeks. And in Sparta, it was courage and loyalty. So Athens told the Melians, we don't care about justice. And Sparta, by refusing to come to their aid, even though they had promised to, said basically, we're no longer brave and we don't care about loyalty anymore, because they were not loyal to their allies. So both of them had betrayed their principles. That's the most important thing we learned from the Melian dialogue. So then we have who won the Peloponnesian War and what happened to the Greeks because of it. All of you told me that Sparta won. This was true. You left out what happened because of it, and that was that the war, the Peloponnesian War, weakened Greece, giving Philip of Macedonia the opportunity to invade. which he did, and conquered them. Had they not weakened themselves fighting each other, he probably would not have been able to invade and conquer them. Weakened Greece, not weakened the Greeks, so this needed to be singular. Who was Alexander the Great? What did he conquer? You know about that. He was the son of Philip of Macedon, and he conquered almost everything. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but he conquered the whole world that anybody of his time and place cared about. What happened after Alexander died? Now, several of you told me that his sons divided up the empire. He only had one surviving son who was not really good for much. And it wasn't his sons, but his generals divided his empire. And they and their descendants spent, I think it was 3 or 4 generations fighting each other. And that weakened all of their empires, and to the point that eventually they all were conquered, mostly by Rome. The Seleucids were conquered by the Persians. And what is Hellenism? Why is it important? Most of you told me that Hellenism is the spread of Greek culture after Alexander's empire. And most of you told me that it helped the gospel to spread. This was part of God setting up the world. You remember, what is it? One of the apostles, one of the epistles says, when the fullness of time had come, God became man. Well, this is part of the fullness of time. This is part of God setting things up in advance. But one thing that I want to make sure you understand is that the Hellenists were the people who spread Hellenism were all pagans. They did not intend to help the gospel to spread. They weren't expecting it. They weren't expecting the incarnation. This was God setting things up, not men setting things up. I just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, now we have our new questions. And our questions for today are about early Rome, and our first one is, tell me about the founding of Rome. And I want both the legendary version about Aeneas and Romulus and Remus and all of those people. I mean, you don't have to include the whole story. I just want the basics. If you want to put in more details, you may, but just the basics will do. So both the legendary version and the historical version. Now, we're not really sure about the historical version. There aren't a lot of records. But we discussed what most likely actually happened. So give me that too. I'm going to say the likely historical version. Our second question. Tell me about the Romans and the Sabines. Not just the kidnapping part, but what happened afterwards. Did they get along after that? Did they fight each other after that? Tell me. Number 3, what were the Sibylline books? Again, you can give me just the very basics, or you can give me more detail. It's up to you. Number 4, what were the 12 tables? And why were they important? And number 5, tell me about Tarquinius Superbus. And the start of the Republic, beginning of the Republic. Wow, yes, I can spell. One N or two, I think it's one. Let's try that again. There we go. Tell me about Tarquinius Superbus and the beginning of the Roman Republic. Here are your questions for today. If you can read them clearly on the screen, pause the video and copy them. I'll try to make it focus. There we go. For those who cannot see them clearly on the screen, I will read them again. Number 1, tell me about the founding of Rome, both of the legendary version and the likely historical version. Tell me about the Romans and the Sabines. What were the Sibylline books? What were the 12 tables and why were they important? And finally, tell me about Tarquinius Superbus and the beginning of the Roman Republic. Play that back as many times as you need to get all the questions down. And there's your history assignment for today.